As part of that conversation, I always want to be careful never to devalue the choices that women make that are different. Women shouldn't have to be cookie cutters.
The dogma lives loudly within you, and that's of concern.
You know, Amy Barnett went to Notre Dame. She is very Catholic. She had a famous moment with former Senator Al Franken during her hearings about how she spoke essentially to a hate group.
And you would be a Catholic judge.
And as it happens, I'm used to being in a group of 9, my family.
And Coney Barrett could soon be the first mom on the court with young kids. She and her husband, Jesse, a lawyer himself, are raising 7 children, ages 19 to 8, in what friends say is a team effort.
But you've got this BU professor that called her a colonizer, and she says that she's using her 2 adopted Haitian kids as props. You have a contributing writer for Vanity Fair who asked how Barrett could be a loving mom and a judge.
A friend, a neighbor, a mom, who could soon serve on the highest court in the land.
It's not Catholic. It is not devout to turn away thy neighbor. It is not devoutly Catholic to take away people's health care, as Amy Coney Barrett has repeatedly said she will. So what we're left with is a hypocrite.
It's never appropriate for a judge to impose that judge's personal convictions, whether they derive from faith or anywhere else on the law.
Her association with a multi-denominational Christian group called People of Praise began drawing attention. The group's board of governors is all male, and it has referred to women as handmaids in the past.
There is growing controversy within the Democratic Party about Catholicism.
I do not feel assured that that you will be able to put aside your personal feeling.
Bisher is also one of 1.9 million members of the Knights of Columbus, the world's largest Catholic charitable organization. In a follow-up questionnaire to his confirmation hearing, Senators Hirono and fellow Democrat Kamala Harris peppered Bisher over whether he will end his membership or recuse himself from relevant cases. Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh faced a similar inquisition from Democrats and their allies. Both justices attended Catholic Georgetown Prep School. It was recently skewered in a Vanity Fair piece headlined, "Inside Georgetown Prep's Culture of Omerta." That's a mafia phrase for code of silence.
Amy Coney Barrett, Catholic, really Catholic. I mean really, really Catholic. She's a fucking nut.
To hear the left tell it, the first in her class at Notre Dame Law School, the single best lawyer to clerk at the Supreme Court, a mother of 7 and soon to be first working mom of school-aged children to sit on the highest court in the land, is subjugated, trapped in a cult which happens to have 1.2 billion members. Judge Amy Coney Barrett is among the most qualified individuals ever to be nominated to the Supreme Court. She's also among the most brilliant and, more simply, an all-around great human being. But Democrats and the media won't focus on Judge Barrett's credentials or judicial philosophy. Instead, they will demonize and intimidate in order to delay. How did we get here? Character assassination, religious tests, conspiracy theories, court packing? Look no further than Joe Biden, who's led the Democrat crusades against qualified Supreme Court nominees for more than 3 decades. Let's explore.
And when it was all over, I said to Judge Bork, "Now, Judge Bork, do you think you got a fair hearing?"
Robert Bork's America is a land in which women would be forced into back alley abortions.
I said, "Yes." "Anything else you want to say, Judge Bork?" "No." "Anything at all you want to clarify?" "No."
Blacks would sit at segregated lunch counters. Rogue police could break down citizens' doors in midnight raids, and the doors of the federal courts would be shut on the fingers of millions of citizens.
Then the public opinion polls were taken, and then the American people said Judge Bork should not be in the court.
In the fall of 1987, Joe Biden was angry. He was angry because he had to drop his presidential bid because he was caught plagiarizing and stealing speeches from Neil Kinnock and Robert F. Kennedy. RFK's brother didn't seem to mind, as Ted Kennedy admired Biden's, quote, courage to drop out so he could focus on leading the fight against Robert Bork. It wasn't so much a fight as it was an ambush. As chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Biden, Kennedy, and their fellow Democrats figured out they didn't have to attack a judge on the merits. They could derail nominations with smears. Bork was just the first.
It is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
I'm getting fed up with this stuff about how terrible this system is. We're big boys. I knew when I ran for president, everything was free game. Anybody who runs for the Supreme Court or is appointed to the Supreme Court, to be more precise, should understand. It's not Boy Scouts, it's not Cub Scouts. In the case of the president, it's for the right to be leader of the free world, and no one ever said it would be easy.
It wasn't free game or Boy Scouts. It was 11th hour leaks, false allegations, dirty tricks, demands for FBI investigations, and whipped up hysteria. Sound familiar?
Michael Avenatti, who represents the woman in question, will be here in minutes. It might get a little bit nasty.
Julie Swetnick says she attended more than 10 house parties in the early 1980s and alleges she witnessed Kavanaugh and high school friend Mark Judge fondling and grabbing girls without their consent, saying in approximately 1982 she was the victim of a gang or train rape. Avenatti teased his release of this accusation for days.
Brett Kavanaugh threw ice in someone's face during a bar fight when he was in college. Do you feel that that is in any way disqualifying for someone to sit in the Supreme Court?
This is why we need an FBI investigation about how he behaves when he is drunk. So that is very relevant. And the portrayal of himself as practically a choir boy, as well as people who knew him in high school. Why we need an FBI investigation.
And what you're saying, if I understand it, is that the allegations by Dr. Ford, Ms. Ramirez, and Ms. Swetnick are wrong.
Yeah, that is emphatically what I'm saying. Emphatically. The Swetnick thing is a joke. That is a farce.
Would you like to say more about it?
No.
Okay.
This didn't happen with Kagan, Sotomayor, Ginsburg, or Breyer, but only jurists nominated by Republican presidents. For Democrats, it's all about delaying until they can squirm their way back into power. Joe Biden knows the tactic well. Biden killed 9 of President Reagan's federal court nominees in 1988, an election year, without any hearings. He continued under George H.W. Bush, blocking 32 judicial appointments with no hearings in 1992. The Congressional Research Service reported the nominees, quote, fell victim to presidential election year politics, as Democrats hoped to preserve vacancies in expectation that their presidential candidate would win the election. Democrats don't have another playbook, and they don't even have any new players.
Good morning, Judge. Welcome to the blinding lights.
Senator Biden was very focused on natural law. How did that go?
Who knows? I have no idea what he was talking about.
I just want to make sure we all know what we're talking about here, that you and I know at least what we're talking about here. And that may be lost on all the people. You know and I know what we're talking about.
One of the things you do in hearings is you have to sit there and look attentively at people you know have no idea what they're talking about.
Joe Biden. Nobody knew what he was talking about then, and nobody knows what he's talking about now.
You know, the rapidly rising I don't know.
The same political power game remains, no matter the collateral damage, for whoever decent man or woman Democrats announce they'll wage total war against before the nominee is even chosen. That's right. The will of the American people being heard is, quote, Armageddon to Democrats. Republicans ran on the Supreme Court. We won elections, and we followed through on our promises. Following the Constitution, we seated 218 Article III judges to date, and vowing to leave no vacancy behind. In an unprecedented move for transparency, President Trump released lists of potential Supreme Court nominees, telling Americans exactly what he would do as president. Democrats do the opposite.
They'll know my opinion in court packing when the election is over. Now look.
Well, sir, don't the voters deserve to know?
No, they don't.
In other words, you have to elect them to find out what's left of the Constitution. And it won't be much. Even though Biden and Harris refuse to tell you, Democrats are planning to get rid of the filibuster, add D.C. and Puerto Rico as states to give them a permanent majority, so they'll never have their power threatened again.
We have an amazing Constitution and we have an amazing judicial system. We should be proud of it, and we want it to continue. And there's a lot of talk these days about the courts being mere political institutions. But if we reduce the courts to mere politics, then why do we need them? We already have politicians.
Like Judge Barrett explains, jurists are supposed to interpret the law, not make them, and they're supposed to look at both sides objectively to apply the law as written. Her former law professor at Notre Dame, O. Carter Snead, praised Judge Barrett's unique ability to understand others' arguments, and she does not regard them as mere obstacles to be overcome on the way to reaching a preferred conclusion. Time and again, Snead explained, I have seen her gently reframe a colleague's arguments to make them stronger, even when she disagreed with them. Open debate? A novel idea that lately seems lost on today's Democrats.
But this notion, I heard this morning, lynch mobs, I heard from another senator this morning, $15 million ad campaigns. Where I come from, they call that making things up out of whole cloth. It's bizarre. It's ridiculous. Look at the record.
Was Biden being prophetic, or was it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Mobs, threats, and intimidation, that's all Democrats do when they don't get their way. But we can send a message to them once again on November 3rd, that in the words of Judge Barrett, we love the United States, and we love the United States Constitution.